Flight lesson number 2, I like to call plan for obstacles, because now especially that we've been through some real turbulence over the last few years, I think we're all like, okay, how can we be ready for whatever happens next? Before 2020, no one was thinking about any sort of survival kit, so to speak. We were just kind of cruising along, doing our own thing, and then turbulence hit, and we're sort of like, whoa, what do we do now, right? The fight or flight mentality kicks in. We all went through the spectrum of emotions and reactions in our own time. But maybe those of us who had been through something really challenging and really limiting or placing us in that holding pattern maybe handled it just a little bit better if they had planned for obstacles. Now, the way that I quite literally planned for obstacles was in my open water survival training leading up to my flight around the world. I was required to go out to Groton, Connecticut, and get dunked into the ocean. Part of it was indoor, part was out there in the water, in very cold water, to learn how to use the survival raft and the big orange suit they put you in, learn how to open the raft in the water. I mean, you're out there shooting flare guns. I'm like, what am I doing? My girlfriends from the TV station were in Cabo for spring break, and I'm doing this. Like, where are my priorities, right? So going through this experience of being put inside that big fuselage that you see on the left side of your screen, that's symbolic of the aircraft. And so you've got to get out of this cockpit underwater. They invert it. You're swimming out. You're holding your breath. You're using touch points in the aircraft to not only get yourself out, but also undo the seatbelts of other passengers to simulate one of these emergencies. Now, this day was grueling. It was a lot of fun, though, because what they do is they talk to you about emergencies in a really safe environment. That's why we get on an airplane, and none of us really listen, although we should, to the message from the cabin crew, right? We're sort of tuned out from all of it. But the reason that they say it each and every time is that in the event of an emergency, you will likely remember that message, right? Because it's a non-negotiable. So in aviation, to get to the level where you can take an aircraft and fly all the way around the world, over the oceans, through 14 countries, and all these very challenging environments, you've got to go through this training. So there's lightning, and there's simulating of thunder and crashing, and it's in the darkness, and you're getting sloshed around, and my lungs are just, it just feels terrible. But once Shane and I got up in that cockpit, and we were making our way between Natal, Brazil, and Dakar, Senegal, we had passed what's called the point of no return. And it's a mathematical calculation on any aircraft or any flight that's making their way over water, and that's the point at which, in the event of an engine failure, you can no longer glide back to the point at the end of the runway from which you departed. And for us, it was 80 nautical miles off the coast of a 2,400 nautical mile flight. So at the point of no return, I'll tell you what, that engine started making some very strange noises, right, in my head, because the stakes were suddenly higher. But instead of worrying and thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen, anxiously listening and trying to find what was going wrong, Shane and I went back to our checklists, and we focused as pilots on what was going right. We checked our engine parameters. We checked our fuel flow. We checked our weather information. We made sure our radio frequencies were lined up for the next 5 to 10 interactions we would likely have. And the more we did that, the more we planned for obstacles, even in that high-stakes environment of flying a single-engine airplane over the water for 8 hours after the point of no return, with nothing to save us other than that raft and those suits, and that terrible food that we would be eating on the raft until someone came to save us. We would be like Life of Pi or Kontiki out there, right? These are very, very challenging environments to live through. And if you think, oh, they make everyone go through survival training, it's just a precaution. It is not just a precaution. This is a Pilatus PC-12 that went down off the coast of Hawaii. It was a ferry flight that was being delivered. Engine failure. The 2 female pilots who had gone through the same survival training that Shane and I did, they glided What happens is when it's called ditching the aircraft or landing the airplane on the water. That's not really a thing unless there are, that it's a seaplane. The Pilatus is not, but basically you pitch for best glide and you try to slowly level down with the water and flare at the very end. They were able to exit the airplane and survive in that raft for more than 2 days. They did absolutely everything right. And if Shane and I would have had to do that, I would like to think that we could have done the same, because in those moments of quiet, when we had nothing else to talk about and we couldn't decide on any new music to listen to because his taste was not similar to mine, we would go over our emergency procedures, and we became so close and so intimate with what could go wrong that it made it a much more comfortable topic, right? It took a lot of that fear away, and I really encourage you to do the same. Now that we have been through the turbulence and the challenges we've experienced, let's talk about them more. What can we plan for? What can we put in our survival kit that would allow us to survive for as long as we needed until someone was there to give us a little bit of assistance?